Alright. Welcome everybody. This is Live Feature Rant. We got both, well, let me introduce myself here. I'm Legendary Neurotoxin, your regular weekly host here. To my right, or to my screen left here is Tsagh. He's an awesome builder from the community. He's been on the show here in the past. He's been involved with Landmark in a lot of big ways, like the Layspring community and the aquarium, so much other stuff. In fact, why don't you speak about some of that stuff real quick?
Hi everybody, I'm Tsagh. Big things I've done in Landmark so far. I founded a community called Layspring, originally designed to make a living, breathing city in the world, and it ended up being just that I had a bunch of people getting together wanting to try out new things. It got a few more than 100 people signed up right now. No real active projects going on, kind of a little bit of a lull. I work on a lot of community builds because I enjoy working as part of a group, and it creates variation and keeps me actively engaged so I don't burn myself out on my own thing. And one of the things I've been doing is I work on an aquarium project that Poro Sorceress, who's here in chat, started, and that's definitely a lot of fun too.
Cool. Yeah, that I'm really looking forward to getting full swing on that aquarium project now that Poro is going to be able to come back in a big way here since finals are wrapped up. Neurons, huh, Jimmy? Nah, they're neuro tokens. Because you can spend them on things. Hey, Amalator. Alright, so to my, I guess, left or screen right here is N3oplasm, who has also been on one of my shows before, not this one, and you were on Dead Feature Rant. And hey, Poro. Why don't you, I guess, give us a little refresh on your background with MMOs and builders and sandboxes and stuff.
Yeah, well, so I don't have much background with MMOs. I actually played EVE Online is probably the game I've played the most that you'd call an MMO. And I really like the sandbox style games. I've played Worm Online. And so when I heard EverQuest Landmark was coming out, or EverQuest Next, I was really interested in the sort of sandbox style gameplay. So I actually started playing Minecraft once I heard it was coming out to, sort of get into building and stuff like that. So
very cool. All right. Now this is going to be a little bit of an interesting episode because they recently had the video Omid and ooh, I feel like a jerk right now. Is his name Michael? The game designer. Hello? Audio just cut out or something?
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're asking.
The name of the designer that was with Omid in the combat video. That video was they're basically talking about what combat's gonna be in Landmark, and oh, getting some static by the way. Yeah, it was Michael Mann in that video. Here, I'm just gonna mute audio for a second. That's kind of loud. So anyway, they were talking about the combat system and how it's going to work in EverQuest Next, but more talking about how it's going to work in Landmark. And the way it's going to work in Landmark is pretty awesome. It's basically, instead of the equipment being just part of the character and you get your stats and your skills and everything from all the other stuff, the way it sounds is that you're going to be getting everything from your equipment in terms of your skills and your abilities kind of like the Binding of Isaac, or I almost think of like Magic the Gathering as well. Something where you've got finite combinations and you're working within the confines they provide to kind of work with it. So let's I definitely want to extrapolate on that, and that'll probably be the biggest part of the discussion. So while we're before we actually get into that, some other big things that need to be talked about now. With the beta transition, like the closed beta to open beta transition, there's been a lot of talk of, the game is dying, or people just, hating on things in general, and none of that's really true. I understand there's kind of a knee-jerk reaction to something that, maybe not everybody necessarily agrees to or understands or appreciates, but, at this point, it's not really that big of a deal. They're definitely right that with the amount of time we have between closed beta and open beta, we would just be accumulating so much material that it kind of would ruin some of the fun and some of the balance initially. But on top of that, there's also the issue that this is a necessary wipe. It would have needed to happen anyway at some point. Whether they did it right at the closed beta to open beta or did it sooner, it's kind of arbitrary. It's going to happen at some point, so it kind of makes it a little bit more fun if we all start on the on the same platform with it. A new message indicator. I'm probably gonna get a bunch of those. So I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts. And Tsagh, you had a really good rant on your show. I think it was Tuesday last week. Or maybe it was even the week before. I think it was Tuesday last week. So why don't you chime in on that real quick, and why don't you give me your not real quick actually, talk for as long as you want on the subject. What are your thoughts about it?
I don't see any problem. The biggest thing is I don't see any problem with people taking a break from the game and coming back. I think that's part of how the game's going to work in the end, and then people are going to take a lot of people are going to come into the game. They're going to have an idea of something they want to build, or they want to come explore other people's builds, and then they're going to take a break and they're going to go play something else. In the last couple of weeks, WildStar closed beta was going on, all kinds of different things to give people something else to do, and that's fine. And I think that what we want in the end is to have other things to do other than just play Landmark full time like I do. But I'm playing some other games now also.
Yeah.
But one of the big problems and one of the root causes, I believe, for all of this sentiment is that the success of Landmark, and I believe it will be successful and could potentially eclipse EQ Next, is that it relies on a different type of Holy Trinity. And this Holy Trinity is it's between content creators, then promoters and people organizers, and then adventurers. And we have this problem now where the people that want to be adventurers don't really have anything to do. And therefore, there's a little bit of resentment at the big-time creators, which right now all we can do is build, but eventually that's going to expand into a variety of different things. And then people who are very active in promoting the game and organizing, and they're the people that are getting all the attention right now. So, and then there's this anger and people wanting to walk away, but I think it's fine to want to walk away. I just hope that people are walking away understanding that, you know what, it's just not the time. It's fine for it not to be the time for you right now. Just come back when things open up and come be a part of the community. And in the meantime, if you want to hang out and you want to play, it's still all temporary. There's going to be a full wipe, full progression wipe. There's no pressure to do anything in Landmark. So take your time, and hopefully you'll hang out and enjoy yourself.
Absolutely. And I mean, there's so much to do, even if you're not a builder. Just touring around, like Dave said, you just go in the gallery and just use that next or last arrow, and you just keep going place to place to place, and just have a blast just seeing the awesome stuff people have built. I mean, I do that for 4 hours on Castles and Crab Shacks, and it's a whole lot of fun. People tune in, and a lot of people are building while they watch it. They get a lot of inspiration for it. get a chance to critique some really awesome builds. There was one build that was amazing. It just needs some texture love to be, really as truly awesome as it could have been. And so that's the sort of thing. Maybe not everyone's a builder, maybe not everyone's an architect, maybe not everyone, but there's something that someone can probably find some enjoyment with the game, or if not what's in it, what's coming. The crafting 2.0 is still being worked. Combat's on the way. Just the procedural caves coming in is going to bring a whole lot of people that play Terraria and those kind of games, because it's the same thing but 3D and totally awesome. Neo, what are your thoughts on the subject here?
I think one of the big features, and I think this is coming from something Tsagh had talked about on one of his streams, is a lot of the social features. I think it's like really hard to keep track of your friends using the friends list now, and I think if they added a lot more of the social features, and people would find communities, and even those people who wanted to adventure would still hang out with the builders or get in touch with people and sort of form groups in the hope that when adventuring does come in, that they can go out and do those types of things.
Gotcha. Too much yay, huh, Chewy? No, R is great. If I wasn't doing a show right now, I probably would be hanging out over there. But anyway, absolutely, yeah, you're absolutely right there. So, geez, there's so many different things I kind of want to talk about on the subject here. But let's go back to it in a moment. There's one other thing I kind of want to talk about real quick, was this Landmarks of Landmark contest. Now, we don't really need to talk about it for too long, but it was a pretty fun little thing. They opened it up, they said 200 winners, and they're kind of sticking to it. Almost 1,000 people entered. So some of them aren't getting in. Some are going to be honorable mentions, but not winners. Some weren't even that good, like I'm sure Clown Vomit or whatever it was. The Rosie Rappaport having, now that was the other thing. People were commenting on it, and then Omid was tweeting it out. And on one hand, that really teased people. Like, we wanted to know what was what build they were talking about, but at the same time, it would really be kind of crappy to see your build come up that you put a lot of time and effort into as something that people just that they really aren't into and say bad things about. So it was kind of an interesting thing in general. I got something in. Tsagh helped work on the roof. I don't know. I hope he contributed the minimum 5% or whatever to get credit, because he did a really awesome job on that. But other than that, yeah, it was kind of an interesting contest. So what do you guys think about it?
I kind of thought that the tweets were a bit unprofessional. I noticed, like, in alpha they were really encouraging, and then sort of, I don't know, the tone that the contest sort of took on as a result of the tweets, it just gave me a really weird feeling, and I didn't feel very comfortable with some of that.
As for that, I think that the intention was good. The execution, it just got a little bit out of hand. I think, though, that the contest itself was very draining. I know a lot of players that are, they're still burnt out from this, and now we're talking about a whole new kind of event, which isn't really a contest, but that the contest didn't give as much as it potentially took away, and the tweeting fiasco that they're doing a lot of damage control on today. Pentapod's doing a great job with it, actually. That I don't think that it helped enough. I think that it pushed people away. I think people worked way too hard. It, like, burnt themselves out.
For the time frame, yeah, especially. No, please, I didn't mean to cut you off. You're definitely. Did you have anything more you wanted to say on the subject, or?
No, you can go ahead.
Okay.
I think I got the basic point across.
So yeah, so to kind of continue on that, the kind of the reason why I think people got burnt out, and I kind of feel the same way a little bit myself, is that, you know, we were waiting the entirety of Landmark up to this point to, you know, this Landmarks of Landmark contest. Then they give us the rules, and when they give us the rules and the amount of time to actually complete it and get it in, it was actually such a really, really short amount of time. It was what, 3 weeks total, 2-3 weeks. So I mean, that's really not, you know, long enough to get, you know, for everybody to even get all their materials. I used like 450,000 obsidian, no joke. That's a hell of a lot. That's more than you can hold in your entire inventory at one time. So that's to be able to do that and be able to build up all of those materials, even because, you know, solo, I had a lot of people helping me, but even still, I had a lot of mishaps and bugs where my material was deleted. I lost 50,000 obsidian in one throw at one point. I lost 100,000 obsidian in another throw at one point. And, you know, those are giant, you know, losses. That's hours of time to harvest all of that stuff back up. So, you know, by the end of it, for the amount of time I had to build it, and, you know, by the time, and then when I finally got it in and started looking at some of the other people's stuff, I realized, crap, I really should have built up some ramps or something up to that front gate to even make it look like it's supposed to be interactable, because there's no guarantee that they're going to understand the whole base is supposed to be sunk in the ground and the gate's supposed to be, you know, right where the dirt ends, or whatever material it's sunk in. I hope ice, because it'd be a great contrast. You know, I really have no idea how it's going to how it's all going to come out, but you know, between the pressure and of course also the phrasing of it, you know, that, oh yeah, we only expect, like, you know, 50 people are going to submit builds or whatever, that they said that one week. It's like, you're just challenging the community to put things out there even if they're not good. You know, you're just putting it out there. Oh, we're accepting 200, we're only expecting this many. Yeah, everybody's going to throw things, and I bet that actually was a cause to dilute it. I think I might have even helped in diluting it. That pyramid thing, the double pyramid thing I made, looking back at it, that's not really a landmark of landmark. I mean, it's not very interactable, and you can't really even see the obsidian obelisk spark from very far away. So unless they're actually going to go through and add more fine-tuning to the particle effects, it's not really going to be that striking unless people walk right up to it, which they're not really meant to. So, you know, it's this unfortunate, you know, it's a great contest, and we were all waiting for it, and we got into it, and a lot of people made a lot of amazing stuff, but you're right, a lot of people got burnt out. But then again, there's still a lot of people that they're just gonna build, they're gonna build. Evil Effects, like, he still continues to throw down amazing builds. I think he was just his stuff here pretty soon to make another, you know, up to 5 claims of awesomeness, and he makes amazing stuff. Lumicite blob from far away. Nice, Noodle Cat. Okay, so any more thoughts on the Landmarks of Landmark contest? No? Okay. Going back a step, any more thoughts on the closed beta to open beta transition and the wipe and the you know, the general attitude of the some of the naysayers, I guess, in the community right now, or are we going to continue on to the next subject here?
I don't know. I've done a whole lot of talking about this over the last week, so I'm ready for the next topic.
All right, you got it. Um, so the next subject is Steam, and Steam has some pluses and it has some minuses. It's got some good, it's got some bad. It's got some intrigue, and it's got some whatever X something or other word the opposite of intrigue is. Probably not extrigue. Um, so, the good. It's getting it out there. It's getting it out there in the public. It's getting it out there in people's faces. And right now, it's, if you combine all of them, it's probably in the top 10 selling games on Steam right now. If you Captain Aroma, he got it. No, it's an excrement. But the advantages that come from having so many people seeing it, so many people get in. On one hand, I feel like it kind of gets lost on us, because the whole point of closed beta is to limit the amount of people coming in, not to, you know, sell packs and try to flood the servers. So there's a little bit of, I feel like, a lack of continuity there with it. But I understand if they're ready to start ramping up right now, or maybe they need the money, and you know, that's how they want to do it, then I guess that works. But there's, you know, plenty of disadvantages that come with it. For one thing, it's being called a DLC pack rather than, you know, the founders packs that it is. So the marketing and labeling of it, because of Steam's system, is kind of incorrect. I've had a lot of people come in and ask me about the different DLCs and what they mean in my channel. So and I'm sure I've seen that in your channel too, Tsagh. So I've seen it in a lot of people's channels. So that's one part of the weirdness and kind of the not necessarily good stuff of it. Now the other thing is that it actually costs more on Steam. The US and I think Canada versions maybe aren't as bad, but when you go overseas and get some of the other countries involved, even though on paper it might only be a couple pounds more to get it off Steam, when you factor tax and laws and everything, and actually goes up, you know, what, 25% or something by the end of it for some places. That's no deal for anybody. You can just get it straight from them, with none of that extra inflation. So it's kind of an issue. And of course, the final kind of negative that comes with Steam is that we can't use our Founders Pack codes like the one Nightbot spit out a little while ago. So unfortunately, we need those Founders Pack codes to be used so we can get more you know, items to give away. The Prime Grapplers were distributed that way. The Feather in a Bottle and the Lunar Anklets distributed that way. Whatever item we see next month is going to be distributed that way. So it's you know, it's kind of going to be an issue for us unless SOE just decides that their insiders are just going to get a, you know, ration. Hey, thanks to Mango XXX. Like a monthly ration or whatever of however many codes, regardless of how many insiders they sell, because they know that a lot of sales are going to be coming from Steam from now on, and it's really hard for us to, you know, get people to not use Steam when it's so convenient.
I have no problem with any of the Steam stuff. What they're doing for us in the Insiders program is very nice. I appreciate what they're doing, and, you know, although I think it is reciprocal, but it is a nice thing that they're doing. Eventually, the game is going to be free. Eventually it would have needed to be set up on Steam anyway, and I know that a traditional closed beta, you know, is about limiting, but I'm not convinced that's what's going on here. I'm trying to talk about now as a gated testing phase. So that they made names, and they're using some industry standard names for things that don't fit the bill. And what we're really doing is it's a it's a gated testing. So anybody can throw some money out and be involved. It's not a closed process at all. It's gated entry to an unfinished product more than anything else. And I don't mind who comes in, because in the end, people are going to come, people are going to go. I can do my best to placate as many naysayers and angry people as I can, but in the end, they're going to go away. And for all of these groups of people coming in, 80% of them are going to go away or more, and 20% of them are going to stick around and keep growing a great community that Landmark has. I've pushed people away from buying on Steam because, well, it's more expensive, and I get a kickback if people, follow my instructions. So, but I don't mind, and I'm just getting into Steam now. I just made a Steam account this week, and I like what Steam can do for giving people another way to be involved and be connected. Yeah. And being connected is in a game like Landmark, finding ways to be connected with other people is going to be very important. There's going to be, without doing any kind of outreach or being involved in any kind of group of people, no one's going to know what you're building. So I think Steam is 90% a good idea. And do you mind if we actually just I just made a Steam group too. So.
Yeah, definitely. Please do plug the Steam group. I joined the Steam group too, and it's definitely something I'm looking forward now. And also, it is not a Layspring only thing or like a Landmark only thing. People need to kind of understand that. Please yeah. tell the people. Tell the good people.
The Steam group is it's for people that have been watching my stream, really, because it's a way to get a regular group of viewers and a group of people that are hanging out together, doing more than just hanging out and watching one person play Landmark. So it's about getting a bunch of people together and creating a connected community in which we can play a variety of different games together and not lose touch with each other as, people take a break from Landmark or want to go do something else for a little while.
For sure. And, Tropico 5, that's I'm sure going to be a lot of fun. We're going to get to see gosh, I'm trying to find a way to mash Fidel Castro and Tsagh together, but there's just no way to do it well. I'm sure someone will figure it out. But
we look kind of similar.
Yeah, you gotta. I don't light it or anything. But just have a cigar in your mouth while you're playing, like a big old fat cigar. Don't light it or anything. Just bring it up every now and then as a prop. Beer works too. All right, N3oplasm, you've been a little bit quiet through all this, so I want to hear your thoughts on Steam here.
Yeah, I definitely agree that it's a good thing for the game. It's going to bring a lot of new people into the game, and a lot of people who are interested in sort of testing early access stuff, because that's sort of been a trend on Steam. A lot of people will buy the early access games and sort of be disappointed with them, but I think there's a good percentage of people who are searching for those types of games on Steam to try and get involved early on. So I think it'll definitely bring a lot of new people in, and I think a lot of the social features of Steam sort of can make up for what's lacking now in the game, and for people looking for combat and stuff like that, they can play EverQuest Landmark and then make some friends in the game and sort of play other games that they're used to playing now until those sorts of features come back, come into the game, and then they'll come back.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure the servers are going to be swarmed when caves come through, because everyone's just going to want to see what it's all about. When combat comes through, the game's going to be swarmed with people. It's going to go nuts. it's going to go absolutely bonkers because we've all been waiting for it, and here it's going to be is, you know, the combat in Landmark in this voxel world that's destructible, that you can build the challenges, that you can build the arenas, and you use all these crazy awesome combinations of items to find some way that you and your buddies can defeat other groups of people in these interesting arenas all over the world. So many of them, I'm sure there's no way we're gonna be able to find a limit. Like, there'll probably be a contest at some point, SOE or otherwise. Build PvP arenas. Do it. And there'll just be, you know, tag it as PvP arena. You just, when you want to do PvP, just PvP arena, click a random entry, go there, fight there. If you like it, give it a thumbs up after the battle. Maybe give them a tip or something and move on. I'm really excited for that. So, do you guys want to talk about Steam anymore? Otherwise, I think it's about time to talk about combat.
I'm good with the. I said what I thought about Steam. I'm positive about it. So, combat. What do you have to say about that?
So much. Okay. So, first of all, let me give a little bit of backstory with my my kind of vision for what I see combat being. So they've talked about the adventurer class, and they've said what it is a class that does not necessarily derive its stats from equipment so much as the equipment is what provides it its abilities. Now, I think about, say, Rogue Legacy, for example, the runes that you can equip, or some of the equipment that you can select, that you can have a combination where you have three extra, you have like a triple jump, you get 3 air dashes, and you can float for 2 seconds as well, or something like that. And that, you know, you can give yourself a high level of mobility, but what you're sacrificing is the ability to drain health and drain mana when you strike things, which for me is a really big part of my my durability in the game. So while it's nice to have some amount of mobility, I'll have, you know, a double jump, maybe a triple jump, and an air dash. Beyond that, I'm putting a lot more of my stuff into my sustainability, my health drain, my mana drain, and trying to pick equipment that maximizes my stats without sacrificing any of my main abilities or anything, especially the kind of fighter gear versus caster gear dynamic that kind of plays in, depending if you play long enough and really get that far with it. So another example that I want to bring up is The Binding of Isaac, and I love the hell out of this game. It is one of the best roguelikes out there, and it was just on sale for $1.58. I think it was last weekend. So if anybody likes procedural roguelikes that you play like Zelda, that one is awesome. And the way the game works, you start with 1 coin or 1 bomb, basic equipment. That's about it. You know, you have 3 health or whatever, or your shots do some amount of damage, you have a certain amount of movement speed, and it's the items you find on every floor. You'll find 1 treasure room, and you'll get 1 stat item from the boss, plus or minus. So that's pretty much how you build up your character, is those combinations. Now, it isn't something where you walk into a room at some point and then equip which specific items that you want in that combination. You don't, you know, there's not an equipment screen. It's a roguelike. You die, you come back. It's just the randomizer for what items you'll see. So while we aren't necessarily going to have that feature of it, or there could be some feature that would be interesting, the level of combinations is what I really want to focus on with that game, because it's some amount of things just increase your attributes. Some things give you better mobility in different ways, like you can go over 1 square gaps. It's, you know, the ladder from Zelda 1, or being able to just full on fly, and I think about in Landmark, though, the amount of sacrifices you would have to give up. You've got an item that allows you to fly. You'd probably have to limit your mobility, or maybe you're not allowed to jump. You have to get a running start and then press spacebar, and then you can take to the air. There could be a lot of ways that they set it up like that, not just with combat, but mobility and stuff in general. And then one other game I want to reference real quick is Magic the Gathering or Hearthstone or those kinds of games, the trading card games where you don't have necessarily 50 million abilities. You have let's say like some of the earlier abilities you had in Magic the Gathering, like First Strike and Flying, and the ability to attack when you're summoned. Okay, so those are three simple abilities, and between those and the casting costs and the attack and defense of your creatures, you have to build a deck in such a way that you have combinations that allow you to defeat the opponent. Now they can build their deck in such a way that they're trying to anticipate what you're going to be able to do, or just ignore it and play their own game and try to beat you, however they're going to beat you regardless. So I think about that with the combat combinations in Landmark, is that it's not necessarily going to be he who has the Ethereum Moonstone equipment automatically wins, so much as I've got this type of grappler which has these attributes that help me in combat this way. You've got this grappler that has different attributes and you use it differently in combat. I've got a feather in a bottle. I've got lunar anklet, so I've got really huge hops, and I use that because my attacks are gravity based. Versus you've got things that help your accuracy. Maybe you've got some sort of a tracking lightning arrow, so it just fires close to me and it'll home in and hit me. So different ways to combine abilities that are provided, and build your character and build your combat profile, basically using the combinations of mobility, combat, defense, etc. It's not going to be you have an item that gives you your chest armor that gives you health and defense and fire resistance. You might have an item that's just like 10% damage mitigation, and everybody's got 1,000 health and 1,000 mana or whatever, so it increases your survivability. You would stack that on top of something that increases your health to further make yourself more of a tank. But all the things, if you put everything that increases your health and your defense, you're not going to have any mobility bonuses, you're not going to have any attack bonuses, you might not have any particular special attacks other than what comes with your weapon, so you might be really limited, even though you can sit there and take a beating and just be basically a true what's it called, a Holy Trinity style tank. It might not work for the context of Landmark though, because it's such an active and moving game. So now that I've blabbed on for I think about 8 straight minutes on the subject, let's get you guys involved. So Neo, what are your thoughts on the subject here?
Well, I mean, coming from most of my gaming experience has been with first-person shooters, so I'm really kind of interested to see how they do combat in Landmark, and sort of I like to be like in control of the character. I saw someone mentioned in chat they don't like the tab targeting. I'd like to see something like what WildStar is doing, actually, where you actually have to physically be aiming at people and lots of movement and stuff like that. And I think I saw someone mention on a stream somewhere that they were going to add in the use of the grappler, and with the lunar anklets and the feathers in the bottle, I think that introducing some of that sort of movement and having to dodge and find a good position to attack, I think that'll make it really interesting combat. I mean, coming from EVE Online, I also like that they're going to go with the approach of you don't level your character, but you pick gear that's appropriate for your class, and then sort of build, like you said, a portfolio. And I think that'll be really interesting.
All right, Tsagh, what are your thoughts on the subject here?
I feel like there's a lot of speculation, and you've really elaborated in a way that further than I had in my thought process. My one thing that worries me a little bit is, and I bring this up a lot, how is it going to be integrated into the world? Like, building a combat system is great, and if that's what we were doing and we were focusing on building a combat system, how do we then mesh testing and building a combat system and helping them iron all of this out with the building tools and all of that? And how will it work how are they going to make it not conflict and have a potentially divided player base? So all of the ideas that you brought up about like what could make this combat system really good, potential, the ability for variation and the build your deck kind of mentality, that I think is a very good way of describing, especially because you can change weapons mid-combat and you've got all of these different tools at your disposal, but you got to make things accessible and you've got to use it right. I like all of that. My biggest concern is how is it going to be integrated in the world, and is it going to feel like there's a major separation? I don't know. I'm trying to wrap my head around that right now.
What do you mean by a major separation?
Like, I like building, but I'm not just a builder. There are some people who want to just be builders, and we need those people. And we also need people that want to just be adventurers. But what I don't want to see, and the tough thing to balance, is how do you not piss off the builders by just making it more dangerous and more difficult for them, and how do you really bring in the adventurers and the combat people without making it that maybe aren't very good or don't have the skill set to be a great builder? How do you incorporate both groups and bring them together and make it more unified? I think that's the difficult part. Now, building a combat system is very difficult, but in the game that we're talking about now with Landmark, I don't know. What do you think?
I have an answer. Okay, so I've been playing this sandbox game called Craya recently, and I'll get you a N3oplasm in just a sec, but I'm just going to say what I'm thinking right now before I stop thinking about it. On claim abilities and research. Now, what Craya has as a system is that you learn new material or new recipes by researching materials. You have to research all of the materials at the proper levels to unlock the recipe in full, which then allows you to craft it. So the idea that you would have something that you can only do while you're on the claim will lead itself to people being builders and being with people who are combat and harvesting oriented. Because if you're always on the claim because you're always building, that means you've got that claim radius bonus or whatever, or the claim detection bonus that says that you're still learning such and such book or such and such recipe or whatever you're doing, so that there's some passive bonus for just being there and just being on the claim. So if there's going to be people doing that, instead of just having people logged in on bots or whatever, AFK anti-spamming or whatever to make sure they don't get timed out, you actually have real life builders building the group's guild hall or whatever structure they're using, and meanwhile they're building up their tools, they're building up the tools that everybody else is going to be able to use, they're learning whatever they're potentially learning. And I feel like it could be a really awesome way to kind of answer your question there, which isn't something I'd even really thought about. Neo, I didn't want to cut you off. I heard you open your mic there. Please go ahead.
One thing I was thinking is I'm really looking forward to the idea of the PvP claims. I think that's one way to involve the builders, is you can get a whole bunch of people together and say, like, we need to build our defenses up, we need to build this a fort or something. I think with I'm not sure if they're going to introduce voxel physics, but if they do, adding aspects of like having to deal with structural stability of the claim and stuff like that. I think that'll be really interesting to see how builders can get involved with the adventurers and then sort of build like defenses or support structures for players to play around in.
Oh, so while you're talking about that, I thought about a couple other things, like just combat and PvP related in general. Uh, I had talked about in the past the idea of having flags on a claim that you have enough people touch them in the different spots, and those are your team or your faction indicators for when battle actually starts, what teams everyone's going to be on. Now, in what you were talking about there, I was also thinking about the idea of just having each claim represents one faction is another way you could do it. So you've got, you and whoever players, you use the system whatever that you've assigned. Okay, me and my claim is this faction, you and your claim is this faction. I'm built here, you're built here, and we're however far apart because of the claim boundaries and the buffer radius. So you set your stuff up, and then you actually have to move through the world and fight through the world between each other's claims. So the whole idea of actually building up defenses and actually having to prepare for other players, because right now if it's just on claim, there's not really that much defense building up and stuff you're really going to be doing, because I can, as it is, I can grapple over the walls or whatever anyway. But even without that being the thing, if it's really hard to build defenses if somebody's already inside the perimeter. So I can see people making encounters or something like, you have 3 people come down the stairs and the group of players fights it, and they're actual real players using a limited set of equipment. They get defeated, they spawn back up at the top, they put on the next highest set of gear, they come down and fight them on the next floor, and doing something like that, so they can even do like a simulated kind of scripted encounter.
Yeah, and I think they can do a lot with props too if they have like sort of like stations for buffs and or like equipment chests, and you can place those strategically around the claim, and then maybe like a spawn point. So you sort of builders could become like sort of level designers, and you can build. I also wonder if you could place NPCs too, like defense turrets and stuff like that.
Yeah, Moshpet, I agree. I do want vehicular combat in Landmark. I want it so bad. I just want them to just straight rip the Mag Rider out of PlanetSide 2. Hell, actually give me the PlanetSide 1 version. I still like that one better. And just, stick it in Landmark and give it all the controls and the guns and, 2 seats, and you'll see... A, you'll see a happy Neuro. B, you'll see many trees being destroyed inexplicably by some random tank that has a grudge with trees for reasons unknown. And C, it'll be, I'll be looking around for fights. I'll be looking around for PvP encounters. That's what I'm all about. I definitely agree. Getting vehicles, getting aircraft, having an island that's like, okay, here's the center of gravity, everything's low gravity, you can go out however far, but eventually if you go too far out and too far down out of like claimable asteroid broken up space or whatever, you'll eventually just kind of drift back towards the center. They could totally do that and have like a deep space sort of encounter space, and that'd be awesome. That'd be totally cool.
Yeah, another thing that sort of makes me think of is if you create different settings in which people can engage in
Yeah.
combat, like you can have a space-themed one, or you can even like someone could build a spaceship. You could have a little like a duel on the on board of a spaceship, or like when they have underwater claims. Like I wonder how combat will work underwater, or there will be combat
Oh,
underwater.
you know there's going to be combat underwater. There's going to be some nasty fish. And I'm sure their scales are going to be needed for some awesome stuff.
Yeah.
They're not going to put water in the game and not have nasty fish. Are you kidding me? Those things are going to be brutal. They might be bigger. They might be able to eat you alive like the Chomper in that one video. So, you want to say something? It looked like you,
Yeah, the ideas are great. I wish they would give us a little bit more information. That right now, like we're talking so far in the future and so deep into dream world territory that it's like it's hard for me to even keep up with the conversation, because there are all these great ideas, and I'm saying they're great because I believe they're great, but we need that. We need just a couple more pieces to have any real understanding of what it's going to be.
Right.
That's why I brought up, like, when you were talking about building a deck and your tools become your progression, and your ability to apply those tools to combat scenarios is what is really important. That's the stuff that I think is really cool. But we saw, like, at this stage, well, even a little bit later on, Guild Wars 2 tried to say the same kind of thing, right? And I think they kind of missed the boat. The same thing, like, we want it to be really dynamic. We want you to be able to switch your weapon and, like, jump back and shoot somebody. And we want you to, and you could do all those things, but it just wasn't that good.
I mean, I liked some of what DCUO had. I mean, I don't really play it anymore, but I'm not going to lie. It was fun when I did play it. And I really liked all the variation that each of the weapons had. If you unlocked all the skills for a weapon, it wasn't very much to do to get them all. But you would be able to do all sorts of really awesome stuff. Like, I was really fond of the rifle for people that aren't necessarily meant to be close quarters. Because what I would be able to do with it, if you hold right click, you're just pressing back and forward, and you'll do like a flip forward, like a roll forward in an attack, or a jump back in an attack. If you're all the way at the far end of the range, you'll just be lobbing rockets at them. If you get up real close, you spray them with the flamethrower. And I was able to basically control my range from my opponent and use all of my abilities to their greatest, because I was just constantly shooting at them and using these defensive maneuvers that were kind of built into the weapon. So, that's just the weapon itself. It didn't matter whatever, the power set that I was using. It didn't matter my movement type that I had selected. If I was the super speed that runs fast and runs up walls, if I was the gadgeteer that does the gliding and stuff, or if I was just straight up flight, which is usually what I was, because it was really convenient. But regardless of what I was using, that rifle was just so amazing for controlling my distance. Likewise, if I wanted to use something that gave me combos, if I wanted to build up my combos for those achievements and such, dual wield was where it was at. The weapons are just designed to combo like mad. So there were things that it was a playstyle choice to use the certain weapons in certain ways, but the weapons themselves all had a lot of variety and diversity to them. Each had their quirks, their nuances, their timing, and they are all, like, very distinctly different from one another. So, just that alone, the weapons themselves, Rave was saying they want their tools as the weapons. Sure, give me the sickle and it's got its own style. Give me the axe, it's got its own style. Give me the pick, it's got its own style. The grappler, it's not even a weapon, but it might have weaponized effects. They might have ones that have a barb on it at some point that actually do impale enemies. There might be different versions, because right now when I think of a player grappling another player, I think of two even masses being pulled together by some sort of tethering unit and just kind of smashing together. rather than, you're not really, unless you can brace yourself with something, that's a lot of strength. You just take off flying as soon as that thing hits. So you just, you'll I guess actually you'll start vectoring towards the ground after that initial launch in the air, and you'll just probably like slide across the ground into each other for the last little bit of it, which would be hilarious. And I bet there probably would be ways that it could be useful for combat, especially if you're trying to snare an archer that your buddies are trying to take down. Not just snare as in the root snare thing, but snag them and bring them over. Yeah, I mean those as just very simple. They said they're going to have a few weapons. I don't know if they specified how many. I'm sure we're going to have ranged weapons, melee weapons. We might have, we're going to have magical stuff. We're going to have physical stuff. I don't know if we're going to have fantasy and sci-fi variations that we craft separately, or if it's a craft one item, pick the skin sort of thing. Really no idea how that's going to work out. And all of that might come with, I guess, Costume 2.0. I think it'll probably end up, I hope that's what they're going to call it, when they eventually allow us to start kind of swapping parts from our equipment and changing our aesthetic later on. So, before I keep going, is there anything else you guys wanted to say on those subjects? Lion tool hits you for 4,000 damage.
Well, I'm not sure what they plan on doing exactly with combat, but I think that the best thing that they could do is to sort of give players the freedom to use the elements they introduce in the combat to build scenarios or to build combat on the claims. I think that is really keeping is really like fits in with the spirit of Landmark, where you can build an interactive claim, and it sort of leads into story bricks, I think. So I'm hoping that's the approach that they take with combat.
Yeah, I'm really interested in seeing how it is gonna all lay out, how it is all gonna work. And yes, magic has been confirmed already. Papuza, not just voxelmancy, but they've actually said magic will be a set of abilities that we're going to have in Landmark. It's not just going to be ho-hum fantasy weapons and whatever Star Trek weapons we have, or Star Wars, or whatever Spaceballs. One of my buddies actually hadn't seen Star Wars before he saw Spaceballs, so when he saw Star Wars afterward, he said, "This is like a less funny Spaceballs," which is just hilarious. And that's actually something I'm wondering, is how many people are going to have just straight comedy builds, just making something that's meant to be hilarious, that it's full on Warner Brothers style. Acme Laboratory of Mayhem. There's anvils that fall when you step on things. There's a point where there's anvils falling and they make specific sounds, so if you successfully run through it, it plays a little tune behind you as they fall through. That sort of hilarious stuff I could see people doing with the encounter space. And that's once we get traps and once we get AI features and stuff, we'll actually be able to do that. We'll actually be able to script those kind of events and have lots of really fun sorts of stuff with it. We are, for what I understand, we are going to be interfacing with Storybricks itself, the actual system. And from what I understand, this is probably going to be one of the first games where players are actually going to be interfacing using Storybricks to create content for the larger, for the greater game. And it's not just, it's not just the encounters we're going to make for Landmark, it's also the encounters we're potentially going to be making for EverQuest Next. Now, they're definitely going to have to apply attributes and all of those things and properly set them up for Next, but being able to set up the general layout of the encounter, who we fight, the pacing of it, the timing of it, the process of getting through, all of that. Create an anvil. Awesome, Damien. The process of getting through and such, it's you know, it's something. There's going to be a lot of factors to it for sure. Um, Man, okay. So we've got. Let me open it up to you guys because I feel like I've been talking for a few minutes here. Tsagh, did you want to say something? You look like you were about to say something.
I don't have a whole lot, but what do we think about the a little bit more about the collaboration and the building of EQ Next?
Okay, so I mean that's a big time subject, and there's actually I suppose we probably should have talked about that earlier. There's currently this poll going on about craft. We're going to be helping them figure out the aesthetic for EverQuest Next for these races, not just building stuff in game, but also submitting concept sketches and designs, potentially 3D models and sculptures and all that sort of fun stuff. So people are really going to be able to do a lot to help SOE contribute. And from the sound of it, they're going to let us know it's going to be like a full month when they pick that we'll be able to help them. And they're going to actually, before that month begins, do a special, I guess, detail pack, kind of a codex for the aesthetic, so we know kind of where it starts from, so we can add on to it rather than them giving us a blank slate and, you know, trying to pick from a bunch of awesome non-unified styles that everybody comes up with. So they definitely have a basic idea in mind based on what EverQuest 1 and 2 had of what dwarves and what dark elves are going to be, what their structures are going to look like, what daily life is going to be like for them, what their, you know, their goals and dreams for you know, expansion across the continent, if they're, you know, how much they use the height and depth of the world versus how much they span sideways and outwards. All of these things, these are major details. This is, you know, this is the lore. This isn't just the aesthetic. This is the lore that we're helping them define here. So, you know, it's kind of funny that the live stream they kept saying dwarf, dwarf, dwarf. Most people were saying dwarf, even though I love dwarf. I'm really excited for dwarf, but I decided to vote dark elf because we don't have the stuff for dwarves yet. We don't. The materials don't even all line up. They're still not scaled properly from the alpha to beta transition. You know, you'll see that if you use like a horizontal or vertical striped iron, for example, you'll see that it doesn't line up one-to-one with the voxels. So, you know, we don't even have everything lining up properly. Suit store lining up properly for actually being able to make these things in a way that we can then pick it up and place it somewhere else in the world and not have the aesthetic, you know, get ruined because all of the lines and everything is being thrown off a bit. So I'm not saying that dark elf architecture doesn't have that level of precision to it that we would expect from dwarves, but I would say dwarves are going to have a lot of metal and a lot of very fine stonework, and we really just don't have that stuff yet. We have a bit, but iron and a little bit of gold and, you know, some of the stone that we have isn't quite going to be enough, I think, to truly translate the dwarven aesthetic and do it in such a way that, you know, everybody participating isn't going to have to need to know, you know, super fancy putty anti-negative inlay whatever techniques in healed earth.
Yeah, it's not a technical building. A technical building will come into play, but it's about feeling and design and creating an immersive environment. I think is what they're working on. It's not going to be only open to the people that can, you know, turn a square into an elephant.
Yeah, that's true, Com. Elvish is flowing lines. Well, we'll see. I guess I was kind of getting them confused with the dark elves from Vanguard, which I just imagine a big sprawling castle made of obsidian that digs into the ground, which was kind of their starting place. By the way, everybody, if you enjoy Vanguard and what's it called, Wizardry Online, they're going to be ending on I believe July 31st, was it? So if you want to learn about these games and know what they're all about, you've got limited time. Yeah, we do need a major texture overhaul. Yeah, I agree with you guys. There's definitely a lot that we're gonna need there, and it's and you know, they're both of them. The other thing is, I would say, dwarfs the props we don't have. Like, I would imagine a lot of anvils, a lot of mine carts, a lot of, you know, piles of rough ore, and more beer-related things, more mugs, more, you know, barrels with taps on them, and, you know, all that sort of stuff. You know, the infusers are all distilleries, they're all stills, but you know, not everything a dwarf drinks is hard alcohol. They drink lots of ale too. I'm sure they drink it like water. So, you know, really, either one could come first, but I feel like dwarves, it should probably maybe hold off a little bit, because we really need to have, I would say, all of the metals available to us before we can really do them proper justice. Like, not all the metals, but all the materials of all the metals. Tsagh, you sound like you want to say something. You're a big time builder too, so I really, you know, your comments and your input is definitely very much appreciated by, you know, us in the community as well as Sony itself.
Once we get the information, like when we get their little Bible they're passing out, and there's some more details, I'll have a better opinion about what my level of involvement will be in it. But my favorite thing about Landmark conceptually is not the we're building for EQ Next part, it's the other part. So for me, the being led it's hard for me. That I want to be completely open and coming up with ideas and working with other people that have great ideas themselves. And I don't mind being involved in the EQ Next part, but that's not what truly excites me about Landmark. And so I feel like personally I'll have trouble. You know, I might wake up one morning and have an idea for something that would fit perfectly into what they're working on and feel like I can contribute, but I'm not jumping on this like, yeah, like you read the forum posts after, pages and pages of people like tripping over their own feet trying to get to their computer to build a dark elf thing. I'm already working on some stuff that I like. And that's what it's about for me.
I gotcha.
Yeah, I agree with Tsagh. I like community builds too. So I mean, I'd be interested in building stuff for Next if like a whole bunch of people were doing it and it was a community build thing, and that would be kind of interesting for me. But yeah, I definitely agree with Tsagh. I'm really more interested in building stuff for Landmark as opposed to Next. I think that there's a lot more freedom in what you can build, and sort of jump on all kinds of different projects. So, like, there's so much variety in what people are working on that I think it will be more interesting for me, at least, to build stuff for Landmark.
Yeah.
What I would love to see, if this is really going to be like a focus group, you know, a collaboration, I think this is a good time to test the server rule sets too. What I want to see is, so now they just open up. I know there's a cost associated, but they've got a lot more money coming in now from Steam. Open up one more server, And this server is it's the focus group server, and it's got a limited number of islands, and the biomes are set the way that you want them. So you're always going to be on the right kind of plot of land to contribute well, and that's where you go. And then it would feel like there's this community involvement, and you're building this dwarven world, and everyone will feed off of everybody else. It's an opportunity to do something great, but the way that it's talked about right now, it's like, oh no, are we doing another contest? Is my stuff going to be an EQ next? And the answer is no, it's not a contest. As far as I know, there's no prize. No, what you're doing is not going to be an EQ next, but you're going to be part of the
actually.
They're not going to take anything you build out of this and put it directly into EQ Next. You're going to be involved in the development process. You're going to be influencing the art team. You're going to be involved.
Well,
but that's what I want them to make sure that that's the message going out.
The other thing, though, they've said is that the people who are involved with helping them design the aesthetic are the people that are actually going to be able to have land in-game to, build up and do stuff with. So that's part of what's going on with this, is if you help them design the Dark Elf aesthetic, you help them design the Dwarf aesthetic, you might actually be given some amount of room to help build up the Dwarf town. And actually you get a spot of it that you can build up. They might give you, some amount of, they'll take your voxel version and then, turn it into an actual model and clean it up. Or maybe they will actually have some amount of voxel buildings and just expect a certain level of quality out of it.
I do not get the impression that they're going to be taking buildings that players make from what we're doing right now when we don't have the tools and turning that into things that directly are added to EQ Next. I think that there will be a lot of influencing, there will be a lot of idea building, there will be a lot of people who are mentioned as really working towards something, but I can make some really, really, really good buildings, but I can't make something that's going to be good enough for this game that's going to come out several years from now, potentially, and we're just not ready for that. If you guys disagree, say so, but I cannot imagine, and I don't even think it would be a good idea if they took stuff from this and put it directly into EQ Next. I want EQ Next to be the culmination of everything great that players have done, plus what a professional art team can do to take what players have done and turn it into something that really works into their world. And that's why I like the focus group collaboration type thing. But right now, we are not. We're not. We might walk around in EQ Next and say, "Hey, you know what? That was like my contribution." But then you're going to look, and it's going to be a contribution that's stylized differently and made to work, and that's great, and it is contributing, but it's not going to be like as much of I put my stamp as, or at least not at this stage. Maybe later on there will be events and things that you could do that are like literally putting your stamp on there with your name in EQ Next. But what this is about right now is not that. This is about trying to helping the art team to realize their vision in the voxel world.
Then again, there could be, Tsagh's three-way brass pipe elbow fitting that is the most recognizable piece in the Dwarven architecture. But no, I absolutely understand what you're saying. It isn't necessarily, and while they definitely say that, yeah, and they're not lying when they say it, that what us players can do with voxels goes above and beyond what they can do as a team and have, even the man hours, if all of them are building, to be able to complete and come up with. But that's voxels. We can only go so far with voxels. They plan to have EverQuest next with fully functional, fully beautifully designed environments. We might have buildings like they've shown that can be broken down into voxels and have the voxels, have physics of their own as they fall apart. Like we saw with the Iron Golem punching down the Karen's little house. So there is going to have to be some voxel element to the design of everything they put in the game. But that doesn't mean that they aren't making very specific things. This specific voxel rock is designed this specific way with this specific texture, and when you start breaking through it, the areas you break through change to a different material or something like that. There's a lot of different ways they can do it and have it work well. And of course, that's all going to be, they're definitely figuring all of that stuff out right now as they build Landmark, because this is where they're, experimenting on the tools, and they're still working on next, of course, behind closed doors, and we're not seeing every feature necessarily as it's developed, but we're definitely getting a chance to see the stuff that they're working on, and kind of get an idea of what they're going to be able to do and what they can do. What we've seen already from the props and the quality of those is, I think, the quality of what we're going to see in EverQuest next. And the props that we have in game are great. They're amazing. They're just really, really well detailed. Especially all the new ones they've done. The ones that have hung around kind of since Alpha. Maybe, not quite as beautiful, but Fire SOA moved legendary Neuro's building. No. It's a lighting effect.
Well, and props, the prop creation systems, like from what we've seen from Voxel Farm and what's really possible with all of that, and the system where you can make something at a large scale and shrink it down with the potential in-game prop creation editor, that eventually that's going to be outsourced a little bit to us as well. And of course, they're going to pick and choose, but I think it's probably more likely that you see a specific prop that you designed in that way make it into EQ Next than like a voxel building. And the reason that I imagine that they'll use these voxel farm techniques for props is that, especially going into EQ Next, where they want everything to be destructible, that in that way it is, that things are going to shatter like the voxel world, and there's going to be a real material cost to them. And I think that although it's way down the line as even a possibility, that's going to be where people are more likely to see, like, I actually made that flag, or I actually made that chair, and it is sitting in this room in EQ Next, and that's going to be the stuff that will be awesome, right, and potentially carried forward. Of course, I could be completely wrong, and they might not even implement that, even though it's possible. And as far as I can tell, the crafting stations were made using that system. It looks to me like apart before some of the things were added, the textures are scaled down from what we have. The crafting stations look like they were made out of voxels and shrunk down. That may not be how they made them. Or they may have been converted to a mesh and shrunk down, but that's how it can potentially work. At least from what Voxel Farms demonstrated.
Yeah, and I mean it is definitely. I mean, I've wondered if we're going to eventually have something where we build things on a large scale with voxels, potentially something even not necessarily on a claim, but in a separate sort of space. And then tell it, now make a prop out of it, and it shrinks it down and applies the textures properly, and you have a prop version of it based on the voxel reference. I'd love to see that. It would give us a lot of features, especially if we don't actually have to import a model, because anytime we have to import a model, SOE isn't just going to let us straight import models. They're going to have to, have us pass it through and make sure there's no viruses, make sure there's no copyrighted content hidden anywhere. And so that, that process can take upwards of a few months to, just for a cup. And if they've got 500 cups and they only need 10, then 490 of them they have to make the decision not to go with. So that's why a voxel to prop system in game would probably be one of the most powerful ways. Or I think about Second Life, that pretty much everything in that game except for the character models are made from primitive shapes that are just textured in one way or another. And I mean, it might look like you're playing an MMO on a Nintendo 64, but it works for the aesthetic. Tsagh, you had some experience with Second Life, didn't you? You were no.
No.
No, I had someone on who was a former Second Life builder. That wasn't you, Neo, was it? No. Who was that? Who was that? Oh, yeah, I don't think it was Diggs or Ara. Think you Disco Duck. Think.
I know Iclithid was a Second Life guy. He was a Second Life builder.
Maybe I was talking to him about it. Maybe, yeah, Catarel, that might have been you. I think that's it. I think you're the one. That would make sense. Yeah, but that sort of stuff where you're just building, basically you're building the props and stuff in game. That has a lot of potential to it. You're not going to necessarily be able to make outfits and armor and stuff because that has a full-on Damianite. That could have been you too. There's so much outfits and armor and stuff involved with it, or the rigging and stuff. Like just making a shirt look correct and having it not totally get mashed up as the arm moves around. That takes a lot of work. So armors and outfits, that's more on SOE's side. But taking something that you've defined the basically the geometry of it, and then using that geometry scaled and potentially retextured in a different way, it's totally feasible to see them have that implemented in the game. And even being able to have people make items, add special effects, like maybe you add particle effects to it as well, and be able to make player studio items and equipment that other people can use with voxels. It would be pretty awesome. I don't know if that's the direction they're planning to go, because they had talked about not wanting to be like the Photoshop of voxels, but I really don't get, other than if they mean they just don't want a bunch of plugins or something. Photoshop's great. It's got a lot of tools. If Landmark had, not necessarily that level of, needing to learn the menus and complexity just to be able to do certain things, but definitely, building upon what they've got and trying to build towards something where you could potentially turn a template or a creation of some sort into a scaled model, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I think I was watching chat and I just saw Voidlust had mentioned he sort of wanted prop creation to be out of game. I think I do agree with him. I think 3D modelers have already solved the problem of in terms of prop creation. The 3D modelers are really superior to what we can do with voxels, I think. And I mean that's something that they're well suited to, is my opinion. So I think a lot of, once they start accepting stuff for Player Studio, I think a lot of the builds will become more interesting with all the props that we'll see coming in. So I'm sort of interested to see how people will use the props, and like people have already using this small set of limited props in very creative ways. So with a really wide range of props, I think that we'll see a lot of really interesting builds.
I pulled a Tanlin. I definitely wouldn't say that I wouldn't. Thanks for the follow. wouldn't use props based on 3D models as the like definitive, these are your awesome props sort of thing. But the idea that somebody can make something that's, you know, just a simple item, it's not going to be as detailed as a prop, but it's going to have more specificity and control than you're going to have with just voxels alone. To be able to create decorations, or even potentially, you know, hand equipable items, or a helmet that, you know, doesn't have any animation to it, that just plops on your head like a bucket. That sort of stuff, or glass jars, or that sort of stuff, you know, it wouldn't be unreasonable to have something in game as like a go-between. And maybe it'd also be a good way for people to really template things and really have an understanding of what they should, you know, make. You could build 20 voxel versions, I guess propsel versions or whatever of them, and see which items are more popular and that people like more. And the ones that get more use, those are the ones that you actually build the models of, submit to Player Studio. In the Player Studio, you can actually submit a note or follow up with them saying, hey, you know, I've been doing some research with these items. Of all of them, this one's been doing the best. It's used in such and such amount of builds and claims and number of characters that have it or whatever. And they might, you know, expedite the process if it's a really awesome item, get it in the game, because SOE's not stupid. They want money. You know, if there's a hot item, they're going to get it in as quick as possible. So I could see it being a go-between from voxels and actual real deal props to have something that allows us to make something, you know, like I said, it's a surface geometry that we're applying textures to in a specific way, but it's not, you know, the full fidelity that we have of a model, and it's only using the, you know, the textures that we have in game plus or minus. Yeah. Definitely though. I agree, and I do not want to take away 3D modeled props as a thing. 3D modeled props, that is the level of quality we need for top-notch everything in Landmark. For player made stuff, for stuff made from SOE, for stuff that we're going to see in EverQuest Next. I mean, it's all going to have to be, you know, done in a 3D modeler. And that's the other nice thing, is if there's actually, there might potentially be a way to export your voxelized prop things or whatever to then finish off in a 3D modeling program. So it could be something to help people, you know, get the initial work done and then do the fine-tuning in a different program. There's a lot of potential for it. ZBrush, $795. Don't recommend it. Blender is free. Blender is free. Just go with that. It's got a good community. Yeah, so do we want to keep talking about the subject? Do we want to go back to combat or anything else?
I wish we had more to talk about with combat, but we're just we're already so deep into the realm of blind speculation that I just don't know how to draw any more conversation out of it.
Okay. Well, there is one thing I did want to talk about, and that's, you know, combat related. I think I linked this for you, Tsagh. I don't know if I linked it for you, Neo. I'm gonna link it in chat here actually, so that way everyone can see it. Maybe just a second to get to the right spot here. So Warframe is very fun, action-oriented, and it's another game that I would use as an example of the kind of combat I would love to see in Landmark, because it is an action-oriented game. There's not necessarily destructible terrain, but you're doing a lot of basically parkour. You're doing a lot of wall running, a lot of sliding, you know, air jumps and glides, and awesome acrobatics. So, and there's even, you know, you can go melee with all that if you want. You don't just have to use guns. Sculptress was bought by Pixel Logic, by the way, and that's why it's been left in the state that it is, because they just wanted as an introductory tool to get people into ZBrush. Anyway, so why I talk about Warframe, not necessarily because of the mechanics of combat, which it's pretty fun, but the the elemental system is something that I really like. No, Warframe, what? It's not pay to win. I didn't fucking put a dime in that game and I kick ass. You're hilarious. You just have to come back every other week for their the potato giveaways. I am not kidding. You get every other week they'll give a gold potato or a silver potato, and those are the things you need to double the amount of attributes or equipable stuff rather that you can have on your equipment. That's totally not what I'm here for. It's the elemental system and the damage 2.0 link that I listed. Now, the way they resolved their elemental system is that they have 12 elements. There's 4 base elements, and they combine together into 8 more dynamic elements. Each element has its own properties to it. So cold is slow down. Electricity has a potential for a chain attack and a potential stun to it. Works good on robots. Heat works on it's damage over time. It does a panic. It's really good for crowd control. And toxin is damage over time. I didn't really use toxin a lot despite my name. I just didn't find it to be that effective, except in combinations. Now, it was how they combine that made things really interesting. Excuse me, not 8 combinations, 6 combinations. So if you get heat and cold together, you get blast, which does a knockdown. Now, if the enemy is vulnerable to either heat or cold, they'll still take a fair amount of damage, even if they resist one of them. So you get kind of a dual element to help kind of split the difference and be able to hit in a different way. And the enemies will have, I mean, they'll have resistances to them, you know, kind of plus or minus. You can see on the chart there what they do and don't resist. But you also get the different effects. Maybe even if the enemies are resistant to electricity and toxin, you'll still use the corrosive elemental combination to reduce their armor, so you can just pound away with your regular attacks. Damien, people who use Maya work at a studio that can pay for their Maya license. That's it. That's it. So anyway, well, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I'd love to see something kind of similar with elemental interactions in Landmark. We don't need to have fire, ice, water. Ice and water is 2 separate ones. Lightning, energy and lightning, once again separate ones. Earth, nature, separate ones. Light, dark, body, mind, spirit, all, you know, there's so many different avenues and different forms of magic that I've seen in the various different games, and I feel like keeping it simpler is going to be a lot better. Keeping it simple and then leveraging these combinations. Now, DCUO has some good stuff where you have synergy between some power sets because they have abilities that can work and overlap. What I'm saying is go beyond that, have elemental interactions that'll happen, you know, just because you're using the different elements. I hit something with fire, you hit it with ice. Sure, it puts my fire out, but it's a full shock to the system. The enemy might just die right on the spot, or they might get horribly stunned by it. Crayola. So that's the sort of thing I'd really like to see, is less elements and more diversity with them. We don't, you know, it could just be fire, ice, lightning, and nature, and there doesn't necessarily have to be that one is a hard counter to the other, but more the synergy if you have the attack from one and the attack from another combined to hit on the same target, or the attack from one and the defense from another coming together to see if you take more damage or less damage, or how the effects are resisted. That's really what I'd like to see, is less elements but more of an emphasis on the interactions between them. So now that I've kind of explained that point there, do you guys, anything you want to extrapolate? Neo, it sounds like you've got something you want to say.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up Warframe because that's exactly like what I had in mind for what would be fun combat in EverQuest Next. Like I really like the fast-paced feel of combat in Warframe. I actually haven't. I'm not sure when they rolled out the Damage 2.0. I played really early.
October or November of last year.
Oh, okay. So I'm not sure if I've actually. I don't think I've played with that, but that's definitely something I'll check out. I like that the combination of the fast-paced combat, which is really fun, and then sort of these the elemental stuff that you have to like mix and match. And I think that's exactly the sort of thing that I would find fun for EverQuest Next and Landmark.
Yeah, and I brought up earlier, I think it might have been in text chat, DCO and Vindictus as two good examples of an active combat system that I like a lot of features. Vindictus, your items are what's on your hotbar, your health potions and stuff. Most of your abilities are on your left click, your right click, and I think it was E or F or something. So I'm not reaching for my hotbar most of the time. Most of the time it's the left clicks to get to the part of the combo where I then want to switch to the right click or whatever other attack, or throw a jump in, or back out, or however I'm going to do it. And then I think about that with the context of Dungeon Fighter Online, now Dungeon and Fighter, because it's been discontinued in North America. So you only find it as Dungeon and Fighter, or just fighting games in general. The idea that the way somebody can be the most effective in combat is knowing exactly how long their attack needs to go before they cancel and do the next attack, or do something where they're basically clipping the animation from one attack and moving on to do the next type. What's so funny, Tsagh? What's so funny?
Ted says he's been considering getting a Google Plus tat on his forehead.
Oh no!
I just couldn't hold that one in. I literally laughing out loud.
No, why would you do that?
They're just talking about it. The conversation led up to it.
Yeah. So, yeah, active combat system, stuff where it isn't tab targeting based, but you actually have to get close, and it's not necessarily you have to have the crosshair on the target to hit them. Thanks for the follow. But actually being able, you just need to be close enough, and the arc and the, kind of the forgiving range of the attack allows you to start initiating. There might be a very loose kind of locking system when you start swinging at stuff nearby. It doesn't necessarily have to be, though. I can see people maybe wanting it to, do that or not do it, depending on their style, depending on what they're using, the context of it, whether or not there's friendly fire engaged in the place that they're playing. Because if I'm, swinging a giant hammer around and the claim is set up in such a way that I can hit my teammates, well, my strategy is one that's going to really help the other team. Unless I can, get up in their faces with that hammer.
I really like the combat in Chivalry.
Chivalry.
That was a lot of fun.
I honestly haven't really played much of that one, or really seen much of it.
It's pretty. I like it. It's pretty fun. The sword play in that game is pretty awesome.
Nice. I'll have to check that out.
So, in theory, I completely agree that I love active combat systems. I really enjoy the player skill-based types of things, but I have almost zero time with 2 free hands to be playing a game with an active combat system.
Right.
So, for me, I don't know that tab targeting is really the right way, but I don't feel like... I guess I really don't know the way that they want to go with the Landmark and EQ Next on how much they want it to be like an action game. it looked like there was some interesting stuff going on in the early combat videos, but we didn't see like what the skills were. We saw like a video of people using the skills and all that, so we don't know how they were all interacted. I want to go back and look, and I want to see if there was a like target ring around somebody, or at least a an auto face or something like that. And a lot of people hate that stuff, but for me, I literally play video games with a baby in my lap in the middle of the day,
Right.
And I don't know how much of the minority that I am for somebody that really that making it real hardcore and real fast paced, and only the most skilled players have any chance of surviving in the world. That it, I don't know how to balance it right, because they shouldn't make games for somebody that only has one hand. That's not how it works.
Right.
But for me, when we talk about these super involved things, it's a barrier to me playing potentially. And with things like tab targeting as an example, I'm able to work around something like that. I prefer systems that are more I actually like turn-based games, and not just because of the my limitations now, but I think that they're in an RPG style game. I want it to be more about building up your character and growing your character, and then growing these options and then learning to apply them, than who's the best strafe and shoot guy.
Yeah.
That I really want that RPG progression aspect, even though it's not like linear progression. It's a learning curve, learning about the game, learning how to apply things, and learning how to react to situations, not who's got the best quick reflexes and eye-hand coordination.
Right. And I think a lot of it is going to be, hold on a second. Excuse me. I think a lot of it is going to be really the RPG elements in EverQuest Next, not so much Landmark. I don't know how much we're going to be leveling up in Landmark, and I don't know how much variation there's going to be. If it's like Terraria, where you've got some amount of progression, but at the end you're going to have 200 health and 200 mana if you've done things right, and if you don't, then you just have to go out in the world and find more of the stuff that increases your health and mana. So I don't really know that there's going to be, Hillamdor said, I really don't know that there's going to be levels in Landmark. I don't know, other than the combinations of equipment that we get, plus the items we find that contribute to our character's progression, that we're actually going to have level ups, and that's totally fine. Once again, that, bringing it all the way back to the Binding of Isaac, that's kind of why I think of that game, because there isn't a level up system. You don't, level 1, level 2, level 3 is an RPG sort of thing. You get a little health increase here, you get a little speed increase there, a little damage increase there. You get something that maybe lowers your speed, but anytime something hits you, you release a toxic fart that destroys everything nearby. I'm not joking, I'm pretty sure there is an ability that does that. But it's that sort of thing, that you don't have as many it isn't that you're leveling up in such a way, but that you're getting better because you're finding the items and you're finding the combinations of things that make your character kind of work and make things happen for you. And a lot of times it's pretty much, pick up everything along the way, except maybe 1 or 2 things you'll want to ditch, and if you've got a really powerful activate item, you just want to hold on to that and not get a different one. But other than that, it's something where I think about the amount of combinations and the amount of like progression you get from the beginning to the end of the game, and the idea that like end of game Isaac versus end of game Isaac is like the level of combat variety I'm kind of expecting to see in Landmark if it's a 1v1 sort of thing. Yes, Damien, I take after my father on that one. Except I eat less mayonnaise. Anyway, did we have anything else? Did either of you guys have anything else you want to say? Otherwise, it might be about time to wrap up. I know, Tsagh, you have limited time to do stuff sometimes, so...
Actually, I just have I have my own stream starting in like 5 minutes.
Okay.
And but it's going to be a little bit later, but I'm okay here for now. If there's something else you wanted to bring up.
No, if I was going to bring something else up, I would have brought that up earlier. We got 5 minutes to wrap up. This is just if you guys had any last things you wanted to say. Neo, how about you?
No, I'm good.
Alright, very cool. Well then, why don't you guys, even though it's been scrolling by your names here, why don't you guys, I barely even aioli, I don't really eat mayonnaise that much. Why don't you guys say, you know, who you are, where you're from, tell people to follow you. Follow these guys, by the way, because they both stream. Tsagh more than the other two of us here, but yes, follow people. Neo, let's talk about your stuff.
Yeah, I'm N3oplasm with a 3 on Twitter and Twitch and in game and Landmark, so feel free to add me. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts. I stream very, very infrequently. I like maybe Saturdays only for now. So.
Gotcha. All right, and Tsagh, how about you? Why don't you throw down the details, especially because we're going to be going over to your channel after this.
I stream Monday to Thursday. Usually start a little bit after 10 and finish around 10 p.m. Eastern, finish around 1 a.m. Eastern. I usually stream on Sundays at some point too, but I will not be this week. Lots of Landmark, going to be doing Tropico 5 coming up on Friday, a special Friday extra long Tropico 5 extravaganza. Yes, I said extravaganza.
And it's going to be quite extravagant. Okie dokie. So I'm going to do that feather in a bottle giveaway right now. Actually, I'm not going to do that one. I'll do... What character do I want? The last one tripped people up. How about this one? Alright. Starting the giveaway now. I'm going to wrap up the show here at the very end. Thank you for the follow. Yes, you must be following the channel to win. I am giving away a feather in a bottle. Of course, if you win and you don't have the game, let me know and we can figure something else out. But yeah, it's a random character. It's a letter, a number, or a symbol. And while that's going, I'll finish out for myself. I am Legendary Neurotoxin. I have live feature rant this show here. Do dead feature rant on Thursdays, same time as live feature rant. Do procedural powerhouses 1 to 3 p.m. Pacific time on Saturdays. Sundays 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific time I do castles and crap shacks. And on Tuesdays from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. I do viewer's choice. Also every single day, weekdays noon to 2 and weekends 10 to noon, I do Unity Daily, where I'm struggling through a tutorial to learn C# and Unity. So yeah, come join the fun for all of that stuff. Some shows have giveaways, some I'm just hanging out and do the thing. So that being said, I think it's about time to wrap up. Thank you guys for joining. Thank every one of you for joining me in chat. Love all the follows here. If I'm up to 500, I'll be releasing a special message about the special giveaway I'm doing. So, yeah. Potato. Alright, so wrapping up, signing off. See you later, folks.
Thanks for inviting us, Neuro.
For sure, for sure.
Thank you.
Alright, putting up the thanks for viewing and cutting audio. Gonna be dropping off here in just a moment.